now that Republicans control the House of Representatives, they're doing very Republican things. They decided we need to have an important committee hearing on left-wing extremism. Yeah, because that's a huge problem plaguing the nation is left-wing extremism. Look, even if you want to be, I'll steel man their case as much as I possibly can. Every now and then there's a video of Antifa that comes out and they're doing some property damage. Or, Black Lives Matter protests, and there'd be a local pharmacy that got burned down after, the killing of an unarmed black guy or something like that. These are things that have happened, right? And if you want to say, hey, I'm going to file that under left-wing extremism, okay, by all means, go right ahead. I'm not in favor of property damage. I don't think it has any, positive end goal as a result of it, right? But where do you go beyond that, right? Like, what's the death count? What are we really talking about here? And let me point out, it's not like Antifa is some super organized national organization. It's not. If you think the far left is organized, you know nothing about the far left. They're too busy slitting each other's throats over minor policy differences and calling each other sellouts to actually work together for anything. So it's hilarious, like, of all the things to focus on. And remember, we just had a neo-Nazi mass shooting, a neo-Nazi terror attack. A dude with a large swastika on his chest killed a number of people, including children. But no, they decided, let's do a committee hearing on left-wing extremism. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is like the number one virtue signaler on the far right. She thinks she's so smart. She thinks she's got debate-ending checkmate arguments, but really she's the clown of all clowns. So she's going to go in here. I love this back and forth. She's talking to, I forget this person's name. You're going to see it on screen in a second here. But she's going to try to, like, own this person with facts and logic. It's like a debate bro stream move, what she tries to do here. And she face plants, and she ends up just having, like, a sad public meltdown in front of the world.
Oh, I apologize, Spitalnik. Miss Spitalnik, while you were talking about white supremacists and abortion, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of white supremacists in the abortion movement and abortionists because they have murdered over 20 million black babies in America since Roe versus Wade. And
God, it's all so tired. It's all so old. If you're pro-choice, you're actually a white supremacist. For once in your life, can you not straw man the people you disagree with? Does anybody, even if you are deeply pro-life out there, is that something you think is fair? Everybody in America who's pro-choice, which, by the way, is the overwhelming majority of the American people, are pro-choice to one degree or another. Is it fair to say, I think you're all white supremacists? You know it's not true. You know it's pathetic. You know it's a low blow, but you do it anyway because you're just a tribal loser playing for Team Red. Yay!
1973. That's on average 900 black babies are aborted. They're ripped apart inside their mother's wombs.
Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, let me ask you, so assuming we get your policy implemented, there are no abortions, even like 3 weeks in or whatever. If those babies are born, are you in favor of a strong economic social safety net to make sure that they have food to eat, or a roof over their head, healthcare? Oh, that's right, you're not. You'd want to force them to be born and then force them to live in abject poverty because you believe in small government, which means you believe there shouldn't be redistribution of wealth. God, why do I have to take time to respond to this loser?
So I would agree with you. That could be labeled white supremacy, or we could just label it murder, and it should never be happening. So if you want to talk about white supremacy and the abortion movement, you should really analyze that in your human rights groups that you run as you collect donations from people with your nonprofit, because I think that is something extremely important to talk about, is the right for those black babies to have lives as American citizens, the right for them to be born, the right for them to be given a chance to live as free Americans instead of murder. You think this is funny, Ms. Patolnik? Is this funny to you? Is babies being murdered in the womb funny to you because you're...
Oh, come on, she's so ridiculous. The person's like smiling and laughing. You can't see it, but clearly she's like giggling. Because it's an absurd argument. You're basically trying to say everybody who's pro-choice in the country is a white supremacist or is okay with white supremacy or is okay with murder. You're not acknowledging that people who are pro-choice don't view it as murder. They don't view it as murder, and they're not white supremacists. They view it, certainly up to a certain point, as a choice for the individual because the thing that's in the woman's body is dependent on the woman to survive. And also, we're talking about gametes and zygotes and pregestation fetuses. There's no nervous system. There's no pain for the overwhelming majority of abortions in this country. And you're just strawmanning them. No, it's murder. That's murder. Taking a pill is like murder.
Working and laughing at me right now.
What's not funny are the Black people and Hispanic people and Jewish people and Muslim people who have been murdered in synagogue, in church, in supermarkets, in mosque by white supremacists.
Are you aware that all colored people are murdered? That is a fact, that every single color person has been murdered. That's not unusual. It's not just that people of color are murdered. White people are murdered too. Murder is not just for minorities. That may be a shock to you because...
So notice how she's dodging. The point that this woman is making is we're having a hearing on left-wing extremism right now when we just had a neo-Nazi mass murder terror attack. She brought up the Buffalo shooting there with that open white supremacist who did the shooting. She's saying, hey, there's so many instances of right-wing mass shootings or right-wing terror attacks, and it's explicitly ideological and political. But when that's brought up, all of a sudden, what do you mean? People, all sorts of people get murdered, and all sorts of people do murder. I don't know why you're trying to make it a political thing, because it is a political thing. I don't know why you're trying to make it that way. Did you know that happens? What happened? You were just super loose with your tongue trying to claim that you're a white supremacist if you're pro-choice. Now all of a sudden she brings up literal white supremacist terror attacks. You're like, there's all sorts of attacks that are not white supremacist. Did you know that, bro? Did you know that, bro? Look, either have it one way or the other, right? You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. Either you want to talk about ideological terrorism or ideological violence, political violence, or you don't. You can't say, I do want to talk about it, but only when it's going after targets on the left that I disagree with. And again, like I told you, if you actually analyze the data, the left-wing terror attacks, the ones that are recorded most in the data, you know what it is? It's like eco-terrorists who want to blow up a pipeline or something. Whereas the right-wing terror attacks are like, hey, 27 people just got slaughtered.
Seem to dive deeply into all kinds of misinformation and seem to be uninformed yourself. But if you're going to talk about white supremacy and abortion, you need to study very hard about who the targets are. And it's not just Black women, and it's not just Black babies, it's Hispanics as well. And I think that's important for you to understand. And if you apparently care about human rights and you care about studying extremism, let's have a little talk about extremism, shall we? I think that's important because that's what this hearing is all about. I'd like to inform you, or maybe you don't know, maybe you do.
This is literally just a virtue signal committee hearing. Left-wing extremist, bro. Left-wing extremist, bro. Left-wing extremist, bro. I'm against left-wing extremist, bro, because I'm a good American and stuff. That's the whole point of this hearing. When again, statistically, left-wing extremism or violence is way less common than right-wing extremism and violence.
I doubt it. You mostly care about white supremacists and white-wing extremism, but there's quite a...
Didn't you just say, oh yeah, I care about white supremacist extremism too, and white supremacist extremism comes in the form of people who are pro-choice? Again, there's no logical consistency! It's like her whole worldview is just what you would expect it to be, which is like, I disagree with the liberals and the leftists. Whoa, wow, congratulations, you're so special, you're so smart, you're so unique, you're so different. And oh, you're loud when you say stuff in a committee hearing, you must be so brave.
Of left-wing violent protests on college campuses today. Miss Gaines here was a victim of it. Do you support what they did to Miss Gaines? These trans terrorists chasing her into a room? Do you support?
So she wouldn't call the white supremacist terrorists who kill people a terrorist, but now all of a sudden these trans terrorists who protested and shouted down this person. So in their hearing on left-wing extremism, the best they could apparently come up with was what? Trans people disrupting a speech? Which, by the way, I don't support, just to be clear, right? I believe in free speech. I don't think you should deplatform people or try to get them to never speak because you disagree. I don't agree with that at all. But this is the best you could come up with. This is the best you could come up with in the hearing on left-wing extremism. And she called them trans terrorists.
Mostly care about white supremacists and white right-wing extremism. But there's quite a pattern of left-wing violent protests on college campuses today. Miss Gaines here was a victim of it. Do you support what they did to Miss Gaines? These trans terrorists chasing her into a room, do you support their movement?
I am absolutely sorry that Ms. Gaines felt threatened and unsafe while she was on a college campus, and that's not acceptable. But again, the statistics tell us that when it comes to politically motivated violence, in 2022, every single murder was committed by a right-wing extremist.
Every single murder in America was committed by a right-wing extremist?
Every single politically motivated murder was committed by a right-wing extremist.
Are you sure about that?
I am
are you aware that the Tennessee shooter just recently identified as a man and she was a biological woman? Was she a right-wing extremist as well?
Young lady's time has expired. I'll allow the witness to answer the question.
So that was a shooting that happened in 2023. There is no evidence as to what ideology motivated that shooting. And what we do know is that
Apparently the cops do know, but it hasn't been released yet. I think it should be released. I'd like to know exactly what the motivation was. Look, there can absolutely, potentially be examples. I mean, there was a Bernie Sanders fan who tried to kill Steve Scalise. So there is violence that, perhaps is left-wing violence that's perpetrated against innocents, or that happens from time to time, of course. But again, the main point is, statistically, overall, what do the numbers say? That doesn't mean that left-wing instances of violence aren't bad and wrong. They are. But if you're going to have a hearing on the left-wing political violence, then you should definitely have a hearing on right-wing political violence, and that hearing should be longer and more detailed because there are way more examples of it.
cisgender males are responsible for the vast majority of mass shootings in this country.
I'm sorry, I don't know what a cisgender male is. There's only two genders. It's male and female. That would be that. So no one knows what a cisgender male is. It's a made up.
Unfortunately,
Oh my God. Look, I will say this. That point at the end, if you're talking about political violence, that point is gratuitous. It's unnecessary, right? Because it's like cisgender white males commit most mass shootings. That's true, but it's also true that like black people on average commit more violent crime, but that doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean anything because the characteristics, the meaningless characteristics of who commits a crime and when and why, that doesn't necessarily speak to motivation, whereas political ideology can. I mean, that's why it's called a terror attack when it's violence done for political or religious reason. There's an underlying ideological thing which pushed them in the direction of doing the violence. Whereas when you talk about mass shootings, oftentimes it is mental illness. When you talk about property crimes or robbery or whatever, or some crime that happened on the street, it could be because of a drug deal gone wrong, somebody ends up getting killed. It could be because they don't have food and they need to steal some food in order to eat. It could be because people started hanging out with the wrong crowd and went along with the crowd. So I would separate out, racial characteristics and just like immutable characteristics that don't matter from the conversation on political violence. Again, political violence is about what's your ideology? What are you doing in the name of your ideology? That's political violence. So to bring up a lot of white guys do mass shootings, it's not like, what does that have to do with the conversation on political violence? It doesn't have anything to do with that conversation. In the same way, it would have been unfair for Marjorie Taylor Greene to say, well, black people commit more crime in the aggregate. It's like that. Okay, but that doesn't mean anything. We're talking about political violence right now. All right. Anyway, I'm off in the wilderness. You guys get the point. Marjorie Taylor Greene, God, she is like the Facebook mom personified, right? Just quintessential, totally tribal, beyond comical. And I can't even believe they're having this hearing, right? But this is what happens. Republicans just got control of the House of Representatives, and this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. So the hearings on left-wing extremism, when they're not busy trying desperately to find new pictures of Hunter Biden's cock, they're going to be out there making arguments like this and talking about the pervasive threat of left-wing extremists like trans people protesting. You can't make it up if you tried. All right, guys, that's the show. I love you all very much. Thank you, as always, for listening. Everybody do me a big favor. Click like, click subscribe, leave a comment below. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. And remember, you can always listen to the full shows on Spotify if you want to listen to the full audio podcast as opposed to going video for video on YouTube. And what else I got for you, man? I don't think I have much else for you. I mean, I could do my shameless... I mean, you guys know the drill. Support the show on Patreon. You could tip on YouTube. There's a thanks button below. You could tip there as well. And you can support Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. We have a great Crystal Kyle and Friends coming up this week. Hope you guys tune in for that. All right. I love y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Much love. Hey, y'all. Do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.